Hi everyone, my name's Kirsten Meisinger and I'm with the University of Lethbridge Art Gallery. Today, Deserae Yellow Horn will be teaching us how to make beautiful box stitch earrings. But first, our university's Blackfoot name is Iniskim, meaning sacred buffalo stone. The University of Lethbridge is located in traditional Blackfoot Confederacy territory. We honor the Blackfoot people and their traditional ways of knowing and caring for this land, as well as all Aboriginal peoples who have helped shape and continue to strengthen our university community.
Hello, my name is Deserae Yellow Horn. I have been beading for 20 years, and what I'm going to do today is teach you how to do a brick stitch. So this is the brick stitch, and this is the pattern that we are going to be doing today. So what we're going to do today is called a brick stitch. So here is half of the project that's going to be done, and this is brick stitch along a wire, and we're going to do two different patterns. One is the dragonfly, which is here, and then a butterfly, which is here. So these are traditional Blackfoot patterns, and these represent summer and spring, which we are in currently at the time of filming this video. And along the way, I will show you a stitch that can help you get to this here. So if you want to add spikes or triangles, you can do several or just one big one at the very end. So some of the material that we have are the John James beading needles, which are long. I don't know if this can be really seen in the light. So these ones are good needles. They're nice and small and nice and sharp. You will have these finding hoops. So these hoops are the ones that we are going to be beading on. I'm using a smaller hoop just because of time. But everything that can be done on the smaller hoops can be done on the bigger hoops. And you have an opportunity to add maybe another dragonfly, or sometimes people will put one dragonfly up here, another that on the bottom here, and then have butterflies on either side and then on the bottom as well. Butterflies are super easy to make and they are very small. So there's that. Then you also have your Miyuki beads, and otherwise known as Delica beads. These beads here are really good for brick stitch, which is the stitch we're going to be doing today, because they are almost a square shape as opposed to seed beads. As you can see here, seed beads are a little bit more round, and Delica beads are a little bit easier to work with when you're doing brick stitch. You also have your thread, which is Nymo B size, which is a good size. The size is according to the, well, basically the size of the thread. So you don't want anything too thick, but you also don't want anything too thin, because especially if you're someone like me who is very aggressive, sometimes I snap the strings. And then you have your beeswax. Now your beeswax is to help the string so that it does not, or the thread, so that it does not tangle. That's one of the biggest issues when you're working with brick stitch as well, because you're constantly weaving in and out between different pieces of thread. And so you get that kind of friction on the thread, and that can cause some problems. But the beeswax helps to kind of eliminate that. Not completely though. You also need a pair of scissors just for cutting your string. And I brought a couple of extra things that I usually use. What I use when I'm beading are these pill bottles, or whatever they're called. I get these from the dollar store. And so you can just pick them up at the dollar store. They are for distributing pills for seniors, or if you do need pills. So if you have some old ones that you're just not using anymore, these are really good for putting your beads in. But I won't be doing that today just because the material here is actually really good, that it's not really slippery. So the beads will actually stay directly on the material. So this is actually really good material. Polyester? Who knows? Or else a nice foam plate is something else that beaders like to use. Or there's another type of material that's kind of really fuzzy, and I cannot remember what it's called. So useless stating that. Anyway, so we're going to get started. So what you're wanting to do first is take your thread here, and you want about 1.5 meters of thread. So 1 meter is, of course, if you put out your arms, unless of course you have very long arms. Good for you, because I have very short ones. So you want about 1.5 meters, so about an arm's length and a half of thread. Then you're going to try cutting straight across with your scissors. Now, if you're going to make this pair of earrings for yourself, some people like to lick the end of the thread just to kind of keep it together. But if you're going to give them away, that is, licking it is not advised, especially with COVID going on right now. So what you're actually going to do is take your beeswax, press your thread against it, and then just slowly pull your thread through. You want it to be nice and coated with the beeswax. As you can see on the bottom here, it already is kind of twirling around, so the beeswax will help to stop that. So there's different ways that you can thread your needle. There's even tools that you can buy called a threader that actually helps you. And what you do with the threader, and I kind of wish that we had one here, is you place the tool between the hole that's on the end of the thread. Then you put your thread through the threader, and then you pull it, and it actually pulls the thread through the eye for you. But since I don't have that tool and I don't generally use it, what I do is basically take the thread, squeeze it between my fingers. You kind of need good eyes for this part and very good lighting, and you thread the thread through the eye. It can take lots of practice, or it will take lots of practice to learn to thread properly. Some people will be able to do it right away. Others will have a little bit of, will need a little bit more patience. Excuse me. Okay, so what we have here is our finding, our second loop, and we are going to use this. We are going to do, as you can see here with this half finished piece, we are going to do 3 rows. Now, with this piece, I actually stopped at one of the rows and then I went back and then back again. But this one, we're going to do 1 full row, then we're going to go back on the second row and then on the third. It's good to have a pattern in front of you already, knowing what you're going to do. You can draw it out. You can look online for references. Or you can try to do it off memory, or just kind of feel out what you like. So I'm going to move some of these out of the way since we've already talked about them, and we're going to put down our beads. Now, as you can see, the yellow beads are the ones that we're going to use the least, so you only need a few. Make sure that you can see it. And then the gray beads are the ones that you're going to use second most. And the most color is the turquoise, so you're going to need a lot of that. So as you can see, I mean, yeah, these couple pieces ran off to the side, but for the most part, they stayed in the area that you poured them. Now, picking up beads can be a challenge. Almost every part of beading can be a challenge. I'm going to kind of go over that. But first, what you're wanting to do is you're wanting to take your thread and thread it through the center of your finding and get a nice long tail going. So you want, I'm not too sure, it's up to your own personal discretion, but this is about 10 inches. So you want a nice long tail to go through, and then you're going to pick up your first bead, which is going to be a turquoise bead. So you're going to take your turquoise bead. So what you're wanting to do when you're picking up beads is figure out if you like it laying on its side, like this one is right here. That way you can just push your needle through. Or if you like it on top, where you kind of gently push down and then you see that it actually climbs onto your thread or your needle, and then you can just lift your needle and it'll fall onto the bottom. So you take your first bead, and then what you're going to do is you want to hold your thread with your pointer finger and your thumb. Then you're going to place your bead between your pointer finger and thumb in the same area that's holding your thread and pull the thread. Okay, you'll feel it once it gets to the end. So it's going to look like that. And what you're wanting to do here, and this part can be a little bit difficult, you're wanting the thread that you just pulled through. As you can see, it's on both sides, so you're actually wanting to thread your needle through your bead up and then pull your thread through. That way, and I'll see if I did it. I didn't do it, so I'll do it again. Oh, I actually see what I did there. Yeah, made a tiny little mistake. Mistakes happen. So I actually need to go back through my needle the same way that I came up, and then I had the bead on the wrong side of the finding. So mistakes happen at the beginning, mistakes happen in the middle, and mistakes happen even at the end. And you always have to make sure that your tail is still nice and long. So that's one of the reasons why the tail has to be long, because if you make mistakes and you're pulling on this part, the end, then that way you still have lots of leeway. So once again, you're wanting your bead to be on this side of your finding wire, and then you're going to take your needle, thread it through the bead, come up. Best to hold the bead with your index or pointer finger and thumb, and then pull. And then hopefully do a better job this time. Okay, like that. So it's going to be sitting on top of the wire. Feel free to rewind and watch it as many times as you need to. So then we're going to grab another turquoise bead. And you're basically going to, from now on, it's just repeat, 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 repeat. So you're wanting to go, put your thread down, lay your needle on top of the finding, pull your thread, and as you can see, this tail will always get in the way. It's a little bit annoying, but that's just what part of what comes along with the territory of beading. So once the bead is in the same position as the first bead was there, sitting on top of the wire, you make sure that your thread is through the loop. Then you're going to go back up through the second bead and pull your thread through. So, and in this one, you can kind of tighten it a little bit. It won't be like the first bead, whereas if you tightened this one, then the tail would kind of come in. But this one, it'll get with each bead that you lay down, it'll get tighter. So, oh, whoops. As you can see, I've been doing this for roughly about 10 years, but I still have complications in different things. This is what I mean when I say that the tail is always kind of going to be in your way, but you just got to be patient with it. So you want to repeat. You're pulling your bead to the end of the finding, standing it up on the wire, making sure that your thread is through the loop, then going back up through the bead, and then pulling it, making sure it's nice and tight. So then you'll see that you'll start to get this threading on the wire here, and you can kind of see it a little bit better on this one. Kind of looks like a cross shape, but bricks. So you can actually see like why they call it brick stitch, and it'll always form this type of pattern no matter what. So you can kind of see it here on this one. This finding is a little bit different than the wire here because it has these flat pieces. But it's all done the same way. So we will keep going. And what you're actually wanting to do is you're wanting to count the amount of beads that you want to lay down before you add your first color. So like I said before, we're going to do a dragonfly. And so with the dragonfly, you'll notice there's a long set of beads here, a long row, on the second row of the beads. But on the first row, there's only 2 beads there. So you actually need to count how many beads you're going to make the tail, which is what this side is here, and then figure out how long or how many beads you want to lay down before you actually want that pattern to start. So 1, 2, 3, 4. I laid down 4 beads before I actually started with the first set of gray beads. And then that is 1, 2, 3, 4. So 8 beads altogether before I get to the first set of wings for the dragonfly. So that's what I'm going to do. So I've got 3 beads here. I'll just set this up there. And then add another one. So that's 4 beads. And then, so on your second row, this is where the tail would start. But our wings aren't going to start for another 4 beads. So you lay down your bead on top of the finding, pull your thread through, loop it to the other side of the wire, and then go back up through the bead. There. And so that's 1. Okay. Here is 2. And 3. And 4. So at this point you don't have to bother too much with the tail because the beads are tight enough and the thread used is long enough to hold the tail. So at that point, like I said, it'll just kind of always be in the way, so that's why I always like to hold it with my hand while I'm using my pinky, or not my pinky, my pointer and my thumb to hold the finding and hold down the row of beads here. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Okay. I always like to triple check because I'm dyslexic and I tend to mess up on numbers. So your first gray bead here. So you pull down, and it's the same thing, always going to be the same kind of stitch. Pull down, make sure that it's sitting on the wire finding, then you thread your needle back up and pull your thread through. So then, but you're only going to have one bead, as you can see here. This is one of the really good reasons why it's good to have a pattern in front of you when you're first starting to bead, because then you know kind of what you're going to be doing. So just one bead, and then one turquoise, which is the main background color, and then you'll have a gray. Here we go. So there's different styles that you can do with the brick stitch. One of the styles actually is, and I do it a lot, is you can lay your one set of rows down like this, so it's actually sitting kind of horizontal. And then you can do a couple of rows here, maybe 2 or 3, and then you can go and do the other side there. So I've done a couple of pairs like that. I did one pair that was about had about 6-inch space between the hoops, and so they were ginormous, and I actually beaded some horses on it. It was probably my biggest project. And then I did another one with seed beads. They were black and they had neon colors. And I believe that some of the colors were glow in the dark. There's all kind of colors that you can get in beads. Seed beads is the one that you're going to get most of the other, the kind of funky colors in, like glow in the dark. Delica beads are relatively new to the scene, so you can't get as many types of beads in the Delica that you can in seed beads. But there's kind of a preference for the Delica beads now, just because they lay flat compared to the seed beads, and you can do things like the brick stitch with them. And the colors sometimes come out a little bit nicer as well. So here we are at the head, and you will have a head for your dragonfly, which is right here. So now what you're actually wanting to do is you want to keep on going with the turquoise. And once again, that's why it's a good idea to have the reference here, because you can count the amount of beads that you're going to do. Or if you're just going to do it off by your own pattern, then you can just count how many to get to the very center of the finding here. Because this piece, you can actually add something here. You can add a little butterfly ornament. Sometimes people like a little feather, a little crystal. Basically, it's your choice. And it'll kind of dangle down here and look really nice. And then that'll kind of also helps to exemplify the design that you have on your earrings. Let's see. Okay. Oh, I should also note that you are going to stab yourself, poke yourself with the needle a lot, especially if you like to go fast, which is something that I in particular like to do. So my fingers, especially my pointers, kind of are calloused a little bit, just from the amount of work that I've put into them over the years. So I started beading when I was about 14. And then I also started doing things like sewing, working with leather, and it's just wear and tear over the years. So your fingers tend to get beat up a little bit. Okay. So it's all repetitive. By the time you're finished your first set of Brickstitch earrings, you'll know exactly what you're doing. It's all about practice makes perfect. But you also have to have patience while you're working with things. There's no point in getting mad at inanimate objects. And then spilling will happen. You know, sometimes your beads take off on you. Sometimes when you're pouring them, they spill off the side. Sometimes you accidentally, I work with my arms a lot and my hands, so sometimes, you know, you accidentally knock something over and all your beads fall on the floor, you know. It teaches you patience to learn to bead, okay? And just make sure that your row is always sitting down. I have a tendency to kind of move things all over the place. Let's see. So I'm now just checking, and it looks like the next bead can be my butterfly. So you can make your butterfly the same color as the dragonfly if you like, but I like to kind of mess around with the colors, and the yellow really does make things pop. It's a little bit brighter than the turquoise, and I've lost it on the string. There you go. It's a little bit brighter than the turquoise, shinier than the gray, so it's a nice color. Yellow is often the color that's chosen for signature beads as well. So if anybody doesn't know, signature beads are often used in large pieces of traditional beadwork from early 1900s, when seed beads first arrived within Blackfoot territory, and even before that in other nations. And to differentiate the different pieces and who they were created by, the beaders, whether they be men or women, would add a seed bead into their pieces of work. That way, if the pieces were stolen, taken, anything like that, and claimed by somebody else, when the piece was found, the beader could almost immediately point out where the signature bead is. And it's actually, despite what colors are used, signature beads are pretty hard to find in different pieces of work. It's kind of like Where's Waldo? Because you're looking for a very small bead in a large piece if you're making a vest, a bag, and it all depends on if you're what type of beadwork you're creating as well. Signature beads. So this one, this side here, I didn't really count the amount of beads that I did here. I was mainly lining up this center bead with the center of the finding. So I will count now. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. So there's 10 there. So I've got 4 down, 6 to go. Oh, broke the finding. That's what I'm talking about. I can be pretty aggressive. Your pieces are bigger, so the same thing likely will not happen. And then all you really need, and I'm pretty sure I have one, all you need is a set of small pliers. Set those back in there and give it a squeeze. Do I have any pliers with me now? Nope. That'll be all right. Okay, so that's 6. 4 more. And there really is no way to rush along a brick stitch. Similar to the peyote stitch, it's always going to be one at a time. Actually, that's a lie. Because when I first started this brick stitch one at a time is the best way to ensure that your piece isn't going to fall apart. It's the best way to ensure that everything is reinforced and to even ensure the shape of the piece. So you can actually add 2 or 3 beads on and then do this similar stitch here, the brick stitch, you know. But this is just better if you're wanting a piece that's going to last a little bit longer. And especially when you're putting on 3 or 4 beads and 1 string, they have a tendency to curl over or else bend in ways that you don't want to. So you'll be constantly fixing them. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. 1 more. Okay. And so here we have 10. So now we add in our wing. So if you ever look at a dragonfly, they have 2 sets of wings, which is amazing. Dragonflies are very beautiful and very useful, especially in the summertime when you want to get rid of mosquitoes. It's good to have a good set of dragonflies around. And now you're going to do your last, whoops, a little bit of tangling. So you got your 2 down, and then now you're going to do your last 8 beads. Okay, so we've reached the end of the first row, and as you can see, my finding has just completely abandoned me. So here, if I can lay it flat, this is your first row. First thing to note, this here has around 10 beads on this side, whereas this other side has around 8 beads. That just happens. Sometimes this side is a little bit longer, maybe the center wasn't exactly where it was supposed to be. Things just happen. It's not a big deal, to be quite honest. And especially when you're making things like this that are kind of inspired by nature, it's important to remember that nature is not perfect. So, and traditionally, the artists, the Blackfoot artists, would not actually aim for perfection. You want something to look nice, but perfect is the creator's territory. So, you know, it doesn't matter if there's a couple extra beads. Maybe you even throw a couple other beads in there, you know. And there's people that even look for non-symmetrical beadwork, because those are actually pretty rare. So what we're going to do is we're going to start on the second row. So with this one, there's two different stitches. One stitch will take your beadwork in, and the other stitch will take it out. So with this one, it's best because of this piece here, this finding piece, that you're wanting the piece to go in. And so this stitch here is actually how you get these triangles here. Because if you just keep on going in on one side, actually on both sides, if you keep going using the stitch to go in, you'll eventually get to the top piece here. So let's see. For that, what you want to do is pick up 2 beads. So you pick up your 2 beads, and on the second loop, which is this one right here, second stitch, 1, 2, you are going to place your thread under this, the first thread. Then you're going to pull that through nice and tight. Then, similar to what you did with the first set of Brickstitch, you're going to take your needle and only go through the first bead. Don't go through the second bead. Just the first bead, pull your thread. Okay, then what you're going to do then is go through the second bead. Hold them both with your thumb and pointer, pull your thread all the way through. Make sure that they are laying flat like this, beside one another. Okay, and then you're going to go up through the first bead. So actually what you're actually wanting to do is create a loop. And this is going to hold your beads sitting beside each other like that. Okay? Once again, if you need to pause or rewind, then you can do that. It took me a while to get this stitch. The other stitch that goes out is honestly a little bit easier than this one here. So it took me a while to get it. So now it's just repeat. Repeat the exact same motion, not the 2 beads, just the one. You're going to go through the bottom thread here, pull your thread through, and then go back up through the bead. And so similar to the bottom row. And just repeat that until you get to the point where you're wanting to start your tail. Now this tail is going to be longer on this side just because these I used more beads. So it is not going to be an exact mirror image. If you want it to be an exact mirror image, then that's fine. You know, then you can take a couple more spaces. And so here, because on this side it was actually supposed to be 4, and then you start your tail. Here I did 5, so I actually made a mistake. So in order to kind of, if this happens, you know, get a spare bead in there that's not supposed to be in there, you can do one of 2 things. You can take your needle through. You can take your needle through here and then just loop it back, or you can do this here and just take your needle completely off the thread. Still use the needle, go down to the bottom, find which side of the thread is connected to this tail here. I'm going to move your tail out of the way and then pull. Sometimes, and I do it a lot, sometimes I actually thread the thread through this thread here. And so if I were to actually go back with my needle, sometimes that would cause even more kind of an tangling. So I just like to pull my needle straight off. And then you just put your needle or your bead on your needle and, oops. Oh. As you can see, not as easy as I tried to make it look, but you just pull your bead off, add it to the pile, and you can use it later. And then, of course, the dreaded threading the needle again. So pinch, thread through the eye, and then pull. Okay, and that's how you take off an extra bead. So now we will go again, start on the tail, and repeat. So here is the tail. So this tail will be a little bit longer than the other side, which is perfectly fine. It's nice to have symmetrics, but it's also nice to have a little Easter egg in your earrings. And at a distance, honestly, a lot of people don't notice. Not unless you are a beader that has been doing it for a very, very long time. And even then, it'll be okay. So now what you're wanting to do, you're almost at your body. So once you get to your body, as you can see here in this pattern, you're wanting to add 2 yellow beads as the body. And this is where your yellow beads come into play. So your yellow beads, well, aside from with the butterfly. And then this just adds a nice little connection to the butterfly as well. If you want, you can leave it. You can have a full gray dragonfly. So that's 2 yellow beads, and then you want to add 2 more to complete the body, 2 more gray, one to create the rest of the body, the shoulders, one could say, and then the head. So there we go. So as I was saying, you can just have a full gray dragon fly and then have a full yellow butterfly. So the butterfly will really pop in the piece. But it's all up to your own discretion. You could even switch the colors if you want to. You can have a gray background with turquoise dragonfly, or else a yellow dragonfly with a gray butterfly. It's all up to you. There's no real dictation in beadwork. It's all about creativity. Okay, so now this piece, especially with the bigger hoops, is definitely going to take a little bit longer, but that's great because with the bigger hoops, you definitely want a lot of practice. So that'll give you all the practice that you're going to really want / need in order to really kind of maybe not perfect the brick stitch, but get on your way. And you never know, by the time you're finished it, you might be still good. It took me a while to figure out brick stitch. But it is my favorite stitch to use, even though it honestly takes very long, as you can see. Now we've got into the wings of the butterfly. And just as a reference, I'll show you what I did with this first set here. First one, I added 2 grays to the butterfly. So I made one wing a little bit bigger, which is fine. I legit saw that one time. Poor butterfly. He was kind of wonky flying around. But this one, I'm going to just put in 2 yellow. So no gray. So here is your yellow. And one more. Okay. A butterfly in beadwork is just a cross. So if you see in pieces of indigenous art from 100, 200, 10,000 years ago, the cross symbolizes several different things. You have to look at the context of the art to understand what the butterfly or what the cross is actually symbolizing. Could be a butterfly, or it also could be a star. Within Blackfoot culture, we have the morning star. And I believe it was the morning star that married a young woman from a village here and had a son with her. And that son had his own kind of adventures. His name was Scarface, or mistaken morning star, because he looked so much like morning star. So as you can see, I kind of snapped my artwork back. And there we go. Oop. This is really showing all the mistakes or all the things that can happen when you're beading. You can just glue that piece back on, or else you can take a pair of pliers and squeeze it back on if that happens to you. I hope it doesn't, because it's a little annoying. But it's not the end of the world if it does happen. There's always ways to fix things. And if something like that does happen, just think of it as a lesson. Okay, just a couple more pieces here. Cannon. Oh. And then here is where you add your 2 gray pieces. Hold on a couple seconds. I may have made a mistake. I might have counted wrong. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. And then this side is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Okay. Yeah, so this turquoise here was supposed to be gray. So you once again can just take that off and add a gray bead. Oh, almost added another turquoise bead. That happens. That's happened before. I took apart a piece in order to add color to it, and I literally did the exact same thing and then had to take it apart again. So mistakes are made. There's always going to be some mistake. Just have to have a little bit of patience. And here we go, adding the yellow. Remember to add the yellow. Now if you get to the point where you are pretty good at Brickstitch and want to start doing other things or start making your own pieces, beading is a great time to get some podcasts in or listen to music. I like to watch YouTube, or I like to watch some TV shows that I need to catch up on. Only I can't watch anything with subtitles. Okay, so remember that this side, see what I'm saying? Super annoyed by this finding. It's just kind of now a placeholder, at least until I get a set of pliers. But it's best just to keep putting it on, because rather than holding it yourself, because you might get into a situation where you're actually bending the wire. So you can actually see here, I've been holding, I kind of held it too tight at one point, and it actually kind of warped the wire a little bit, but that's okay. Once again, no one will notice, unless you point it out. I have a tendency to be a little bit aggressive with things like that. And snags will also happen. This is actually pretty good beeswax. So 1, 2, 3, 4. You want your other piece to reference. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So I was going to stop at 4. There you go. And so now you add your last few beads. So if you have a situation like this here where there's a gap, so obviously, and I believe it happened earlier, where one of the beads fell off. And that was because this thing keeps falling off here. If something like that happens and one of the beads fall off, it's simply about taking your needle off of this thread here, putting it onto the tail, and then adding that extra bead. So it's not a big travesty if that happens. But what I'm actually going to do here is show the other stitch. So on this one, here you can see the stitches going in. This one, I'm going to show you the stitch going out. So once again, you need 2 beads on your thread. Then what you're going to do is come back through this first thread here. And you want to pull, pull, then go back up through your first bead. Oh no. need to constantly fix this. Okay, and there you go. It won't be as protruding as the bottom bead there, but it will be. And so it's just a little bit easier if you don't want to do like the full loop that's done on the other stitch. And then after that, you once again start with your regular brick stitch. Now this is, sometimes you have to really tighten. See how this thread likes to ride away? So you really kind of have to tighten it. That's one of the reasons why I like to hold the tail between my fingers or by my hand, depending on what's feeling a little bit stronger. And then, so here, what this top layer is, it's a mirror image of the bottom layer. So you're wanting the exact same amount of beads, the exact same stitch that there is on the bottom. Okay, so just in case, and this has happened to me before, just in case your thread is too short and you don't think it'll make it to the end, I'll just kind of show you what to do in that case. So what you actually want to do is, it's a good idea to actually cut off the end of your old thread. So this one, it would have been long enough, but this is for just in case something like that happens. You want to cut off the end here, which was attached to this side, because this side, sometimes depending on how long you're threading, how long you're beading, this one can be a little bit more frayed. So just cut off a small piece, just to make it nice and clean for you to thread your new thread on there. So what you're actually wanting to do with this piece here is, and this is actually how you end the piece as well, you want to go back through the bead that you just laid down. Then it's kind of like you're reversing what you're doing. Then you want to go, so you want to go down and then through to the other side and then come back up. So yeah, it is basically reversing the stitch there. go down through and then back up and then go, whoops, and then go down, then through to the other side, and then back up. Finding fell off again, and then down. And what I like to do is actually, I like to, once I hit the fourth bead, I like to go down through the second row, bead there, and then go up through the bead that's next to it, and then down through the bead next to that, and then back up again. And oops, sorry, I made a mistake here. This one, you want to go up and then up again through the top. Okay, just like that there, and then you can snip it off. Just fix this finding once again. Oh, it's just, it's being stubborn now. Okay, then what you're going to do is you want to get a new thread. You want to kind of figure out how much you're going to need. So I would say a good 1/2 meter is plenty. Snap that off with your scissors, and then definitely look at which end is better. So this one here, it's got an extra little snip on the side there. It's kind of frayed. Not the best end to use. This here is much more clean. And if you can see them beside each other, you can just clearly see that one side is a lot cleaner and will go in a little bit more smoother through the eye than the other. Okay, so you do want this side, once again, to be a little bit long. The reason for that is when I went through this here, you're actually going to do that with this thread here. So you're wanting to choose one. It can be a little bit longer if you want, if you don't feel comfortable or confident enough to get it done within these pieces here, these beads. You can go a little bit longer. You can even start on the end. It's all up to you. Once again, there's no real dictation in beading, aside from the very basics. It's all about what you're comfortable with. Now this time you don't need as long of a tail. So as you can see, I pulled it all the way through, which I was not supposed to do. Hold on a couple seconds. Once again, fix the finding. This is what I'm saying. You need lots of patience. Sometimes things like this happen and you just got to be constantly fiddling with it. So you pull your thread down through a bead. So this is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. So it's the 9th bead back. Pull until you just have a small tail. And then you go back up through one of the beads next to it. Pull, and see, as you can see, so here what you want to do is pull both ends so that the thread, I don't know if you saw it, if the camera showed it, the thread was looped down here, so you actually want to pull it to give it a nice tight loop. So then you go down through the next bead, and once again you pull, and then you go up through the next bead. And then this one, I like to, when you're in this bead, I like to go down and then through the second row. And I like to go this way as opposed to this way because it gives you a little bit more space to use. So you pull, and as you can see, when you pull on this one, this tail takes a little longer. And the thread is a little bit stronger, so you don't have to worry about pulling this tail all the way through. So you want to go up. So with this one can be tricky because as you can see here, you're going to go up and then you're going to go down. So hold on a couple seconds. Best thing to do here is in this next bead, go over and move to this side here. It's going to be a little bit harder because there already is kind of a lot of thread in there. So you go down one bead, and then finally you get to the bead that you're going to be continuing on. And then you take your small tail here and as close as possible without cutting the line of beads here, you want to cut your tail. When you're standing outside, you won't even notice the difference. So that's how you add on a longer piece of string. So now you just keep going the way that you were. Oh, whoops. Teehee. I was on the butterfly, so now I'm adding the last piece of the butterfly here. And then from there, it's basically home free. You're going to want to keep on going and finish your piece. If you want to, you can add a few fireflies in there, just along here, just some yellow to represent the fireflies, or even if you want to just add some flowers at a distance, add some pinks or purples or blues. It's all up to you. Even some dandelions. And then, of course, whoever you're giving it to, or if people ask, they say, well, what do those dots represent? Then you can say, what they mean to you. If they're supposed to be flowers, if they're supposed to be even other bugs, adding a red in there. There's some red bugs that fly around southern Alberta, and I have no idea what they are. They're just part of the landscaping. So as you can see here, you have a mistake that I made. I added one extra gray side here. So he's got a wing on his head. And you can make the choice if you want to go all the way back and, well, not all the way back. If you want to go back and fix that, I'm not going to. I'm just going to leave it. Like I said, nature isn't perfect. You'll be hard-pressed to find a very perfect piece of beadwork, and, things like that just happen. So I would just leave it, or I'm going to leave it, and then keep going here. And then, so you can also see the butterfly. He's just small, the dragonflies on either side, both with their own unique design, whether it was meant to be like that or not. All right, so here we are at the end, and just to match, this side here, where there is a protruding bead, I'm going to add one more bead. And I'm just going to add it to the same thread that the second last bead is a part of. And go up, and there you go. So now what you're wanting to do is you're wanting to ensure that, of course, it's going to stay. So actually, as I showed earlier in the piece, with the string breaks, you are going to want to go back through the second last bead, and just to stabilize this last bead here, go back up through that one, and then go back down and go through the second row, bead. Make sure that this piece here keeps down. And so what you're wanting to do, just like as was stated earlier, go up through the bead beside it, and then down through the bead beside that. Just keep on going like that for a little while until you feel comfortable with how many beads the thread is going through, till you feel as if it's going to stay. Even if you want to go all the way to the other end, that's perfectly fine. And then you can go up through one of the beads here to the top, and once again, give it a little snip with the scissors. There we go. And then, last but not least, you're going to get rid of the tail on this side. So you take your thread, thread it through the end of the tail, through the eye. You can choose if you want to snip off the end. Take a look at it. If it's too frayed for your comfort, then you can snip off the end to make sure it's nice and clean. Thread it, and then this one is different because you're going along the bottom row. Now you can, if you want to, just go up and down, or you can go through, and this one will take a little bit more time, but it'll be a little bit sturdier. You can go up through this to the other side of the finding, down through the bead beside it, fix the finding that is here, and then flip it around, then go up through the other side, and then here go up to the second row. As you can see, I do not want to go along the bottom. Up and down. And even if you want to stop, say when you're halfway, if you want to stop and you're sick of this tail being there, you can, once you're finished with the second row, then you can loop it through. And then that actually would even hide the thread a little bit more. And here we go, right next to my 3-winged dragonfly on the bottom. Okay, so now we're going to add this piece back together here. It just slides on. And I'm just seeing if I have any. I don't. Okay, so this is what your finished piece is going to look like. This one here, as you can see, is only halfway done, but that's okay. So you can have the pieces kind of be a mirror image of each other. You have your little butterflies on the bottom, and then even if you do something like this here, I can actually go back and kind of fix a little bit of this that's in here. But yeah, so that is the Brickstitch. That is the completed. You can use the different colors whichever way that you want to. You can switch them around, or even go to your local bead store and get your own colors, or if you have any at home. And then, like I stated before, if you want to do something fancy where your thread or your pieces go in on the edges, then you can actually go here. And what I did was I actually only did 2 rows here. I did 2 rows of the Delica beads, and then after that I started to move up on either side so that it kind of pointed at the end. And then at the end I just threaded a bead. So I went through this bead here, went up, took another bead, put it there, and then went down, because there's really no way to do the Brickstitch and place a piece on top. So you can't have it like the others that are standing up. It has to be kind of laying on its side. All right, there we go. All right, so now I'm just going to show how to finish the piece here. So we have our hooks, okay? And you're going to need a set of needle nose pliers, small ones. You can get a good set at Michael's or your local craft store, wherever. Let's see, so what you're wanting to do is lift the bead on the bottom, figure out which side is the opening, give that a little pinch and twist up, and then you want to take your piece, make sure that the back of the finding is facing the back of the hook. Thread it through, and then take your pliers and move them forward. So there you have your earring. And then once you finish with the other side, you can do that again and then just add it. Some people like to add another piece here. It's just all about how you like them to sit on your ears. So, and there you will have your Brickstitch earrings.
Thanks so much for watching the video with us. We hope you enjoy learning how to do the box stitch, and we'll see you around. Bye!